Well, hello again, everyone, and welcome to our latest edition of OTA on the Air. My name is Irwin Shires. I am Vice President of Education and Engagement for the Ohio Trucking Association, and I'm very happy to have with us as our guest today, Deidre Ewing. Deidre is with HTI Hall Trucking out of Findlay. And I believe, Deidre, your current title is maintenance administrator, but as you have pointed out to me in the past, you working for a smaller carrier, you actually have many hats beside just that one, don't you?
Yep, sure do. So yeah, I'm part of HTI Hall Trucking up here in Findlay. My father started this in 1985, give or take. And so, like you mentioned, lots of different hats, but I basically help outside in our maintenance department. We repair our own fleet as well as outside customer equipment. And so kind of whatever the needs are, that's where I'm at.
Right. Well, talk a little bit about that, because you say you've been in business. The company was founded by your dad in 1985, so a good 35 years plus. What areas of the industry does your carrier side focus on?
Sure. We basically haul refrigerated freight. We're entirely refrigerated. Refrigerated trailers can also haul dry freight as well. So we do a lot of protect from freeze in the winter, as well as frozen. So we mainly haul for McDonald's. That's one of our main carriers. And we haul over to the East Coast, as well as local kind of regional up in Michigan, Indiana, all the way down to Virginia, and then out to Connecticut. So
covered pretty good territory right there. That's
yeah,
a lot of areas. So, we asked you on today, we want to talk a little bit about the Emerge OTA program, because we're very happy here at OTA to have announced that we're bringing the Emerge OTA program back for the upcoming year. We had to put it basically on the back burner for the COVID era, as so many other programs that involved in-person meetings and gatherings had been either shelved or indefinitely postponed. So we're very happy to have it coming back, and I'm really appreciative that you're able to come on and talk about it as a member of the most recent class of the OTA group. What led you to apply for the Emerge OTA program?
I, as an individual in the working world, I really enjoy education and kind of furthering what I know. The other reason that I applied is because I'm second generation, which translates to I don't know a whole lot about the industry. And so some of that is just kind of learned by trial and error. So I know the folks that my dad is familiar with, and he's been in the industry for quite some time, but I wanted to start building some of those connections for myself. And I hadn't really been a part of the OTA much. I know it's kind of good business etiquette, if you will, to be partnered with certain organizations that are out there advocating on the front lines for the industry that you're in. And so we had been supporting the OTA for, I think, a couple of years. And I saw that email come through, and I was like, that might be a really good opportunity for me to learn a little bit more about what the OTA does, as well as meet other individuals that are in this industry, as well as learn more from the sessions that you guys had set up for us.
That's great, and you're right. We focus a lot on advocacy efforts and providing smaller carriers, family-run carriers with a voice to help forward their business, to help make them more productive, profitable, and efficient. And we have to remind people of that. But the Emerge program was developed as an opportunity for those members of carriers who wanted to know more about what the association brings to the table and what they can bring to both the association and to their own company as means of advancement. And we really focus on leadership opportunities and the sort of the things that are of concern to the folks that sit in the front office and the C-suite levels, as opposed to those that sit back in the maintenance shop or at the safety desk or at the dispatch terminal. So I guess the obvious question is, did you enjoy being an OTA? Did you enjoy the Emerge sessions, and were they as educational and informative as you were hoping they would be?
I absolutely did enjoy the program, and I had no preset expectations going into the class. because I just didn't know what all we were going to be getting into. In the emails, it said a little bit about some of the different topics that had previously been covered. And then once we were accepted and we got to meet with the previous class at the OTA annual conference, I believe is where we got to meet them. They spoke a little bit about particular classes or sessions that they really enjoyed and saw a lot of value out of. So it gave more excitement to see what was going to be coming, who the speakers were going to be, relevant topics. So
that's great. And you know, and obviously, let's say we're finalizing that program for this upcoming year, and you know, we want to have some good high value content, shall we say, in some areas aside from the ones that we normally present. You know, most people know that we present a variety of topics in the world of safety and compliance and best practices, which, you know, we need to provide, and we're happy to provide because it's what our members ask of us. But, you know, the Emerge program was developed as a way to put something else in front of our members that's kind of above and beyond that. In fact, we're one of our mandates for the Emerge program is that we're not going to discuss safety compliance at all. That's going to be just a taboo subject for the upcoming year, other than the sort of tangential how that relationship has to work in order for a company overall to succeed. So that's one of the things that we're working on right now. But you know, from your vantage point, you look back on those sessions, Deidre, what information from those in-person sessions stuck with you the most? What sort of gems did you really get to glean from those discussions?
So there were a handful of different sessions that, you know, just really kind of stayed with me even after we had left. I was reviewing some of the notes that I had taken from the various speakers that we had, and one of the ones that probably the top one that stuck with me the most was the litigation exercise that we had, which you guys had brought in two individuals. One was a former news reporter and one was dealing with the litigation side of things. And they basically walked us through if we ever found ourselves in the news or if we ever found ourselves in court. Different things that reporters are trained to kind of get out of you. Same thing with lawyers, what they're kind of trained to get out of you. And they walked us through how to prepare yourself for some of that, which I think is really, it was really insightful, especially with all the nuclear verdicts that seem to be happening to our industry. So then they actually sat us down and interrogated us, and they did it on film. And we got to then watch all of ours because everyone in the class did it. So it was one of those experiences where it was like really uncomfortable, but it was very worth kind of pressing into that uncomfortability. So that way you had somebody who was on your team helping to kind of prepare you for anything like that, from somebody that you're working with getting hurt, or because they ran us through a couple scenarios. So you have a driver that got into an accident and the news was reporting he was on drugs. What do you do? You know, or how do you answer some of the questions that reporters are trained to kind of pester, poke, and prod and get further down into levels that you wouldn't want to give out at face value on the news the first time you might be hearing the information. So that was one of the sessions that I think I walked away with a lot of value from, especially coming from a small family business where we're wearing a lot of hats, and those who are very integral to the family business have to be the gatekeepers. And so we, you know, trying to figure out the best routes of protecting our company, because all the folks that we have here are just really genuine, and they would never, you know, if you get a phone call from a news reporter, they would never want to give them wrong information, but they might give them information that they think is helping and it's really harming. So that session really opened up my eyes a lot, especially because I know the good-hearted nature of the folks that we have working here, and nothing against, you know, journalism or any of those individuals. They're doing the job that they need to do. But there can be a lot of miscommunication that can lead to damaging reputations and mistruths, which truth is something that I hold really firm on. And so those just kind of burn me a little bit on the inside. So being able to maybe combat some of those scenarios that may show up at my door at some point in my future I feel a little bit more comfortable about that. And if nothing else, I now have, because of partners that the OTA has, resources that I can reach out to, like, hi, I'm in this pinch, I'm in this pickle, I need some strategic planning, I need some assistance, what would you guys suggest? So there's additional resources for that. So that was absolutely one of them that stuck with me, and I know a handful of the other participants as well. And then there were some other ones that they had about like not necessarily HR, but just compliance in general. And I know an employee handbook is something that we're trying to refine. And I had reached out, I think it was sometime after, and said, you know, hey, who are the contacts that you would have for like revising handbooks? So that was another one. So a lot of the speakers that you guys had, they brought good insights that I hadn't necessarily considered before. And it also gave me now contacts. By all means, they're not going to remember me from the class, but it gave me a place to start for any assistance that I'm going to need.
That's great, Deidre. And like I say, you covered a lot of ground with that, and you're absolutely right. You know, especially with a smaller family-owned business, you know, when it comes to the world of nuclear verdicts, it only takes one to right. And so everybody is so on edge about making sure they're protected against that. And we also know from what you said about media, you know, those people don't come and knock on your door or call you because you've done something wonderful.
Right.
They should be, but they don't.
Not typically.
Right. And we know just from, you know, the way journalism in general, and certainly the way social media has affected just in the last 20 years, how anything is handled, I both in real time and in the aftermath. You know, the who, what, when, where was the key parts of talking to media back in the day. The why and the how was left for later on, usually for queries after it. But now everybody wants to skip the first part and get right to the second and make, you know, we have a whole world full of people that want to make snap judgments on everything. And it's so important to be guarded and protected against that. So it's good to hear, you know, and we are looking at programs that, you know, the litigation part, absolutely, what to say and what not to say, who to say it to and who not to say it. That will certainly be a part of our upcoming class as well. You know, the other part, you know, when we do talk about in-person and hands-on experiences like the one you were describing with filming yourself answering questions and have everybody else look at them, they really do get you out of your comfort zone. And you know, the whole, you know, when we talk about Emerge leadership opportunities, you know, the leaders always tell you it's not just thinking outside the box, because if you want to elevate, you got to get up above the box, right? And those opportunities are sometimes few and far between, and we want to provide that with this program. But the other part is just the networking you get to do both with the people that come and present and your fellow classmates, because as you kind of pointed out, I was looking at the roster of the class that you were in, and it was a pretty diverse background.
It was.
From the people at members. You know, we had attorneys, we had sales managers, we had directors level people, we had, you know, you were maintenance focused on that time, among other things. We had some financial specialists, some logistics specialists. So how important were the networking opportunities you had during your sessions, and do they still help you today?
I think one of the things that was really beneficial was to hear throughout the opportunities that we got to meet the different issues and things that were important to those folks, based off of the speakers that were presenting or questions that they had brought up because of certain topics. So for someone who, for the gentleman who was the attorney, for the other folks, there was one that I wrote these down that was in warehousing. You know, because that's absolutely part of our supply chain. You know, LTL, refrigerated, bulk tanker, farming, like hopper type. There were a ton of different needs that the industry fills all around those tables. And so some of them were small business, some of them were, you know, larger, where they're running a couple thousand trucks. And so certain topics that were pertinent to me may not have been as pertinent to them, and vice versa. But it was interesting to hear some of the questions that they had, or clarification, or like, hey, our business has really been struggling with this, and this is a perfect topic So that was really neat to see, and to kind of broaden some of my horizons to what other folks within the industry are coming up against, and or is that something that my company might be able to bridge the gap on something, or can they help bridge a gap where we're light or we're weak? So that was really helpful.
That's great, and you're right. You know, it's amazing within the industry how many different specialties overlap. You know, they may not be perfect matches, but they overlap, and especially the concerns that you can have within a supply chain, within the logistics. And as we have seen during COVID, certainly how quickly supply chains can get messed up and thrown totally out of whack. And I think we're, you know, one of the things we're going to be talking about the rest of this year and probably through next year as we get out from under COVID is getting these supply chains back online, because it's not simply a case of snapping your fingers and saying, okay, we can just everything's back to normal and everything's flowing properly. You know, everybody's acting surprised right now about where some of the inflationary reports and the cost of goods, and it's because everybody's clamoring so hard to, you know, we want to get back out and be normal, and all the supply people are saying, well, wait a minute, you know, we didn't make any of product A for 18 months. So we've got 18 months of pent up demand plus what everybody wants to do now. You got to give us a chance to make all of this stuff. So it's interesting to see where that's at. And I would say certainly in your case, you're probably experiencing it firsthand.
Yeah, absolutely we are. So out in the mechanical side, go ahead.
Yep. No, I was going to say within the temperature control world, because one of the fortunate benefits of the COVID sequence was, I think, you know, you guys probably stayed extremely busy, doing vital work, getting the hand sanitizer, the essential products to everybody. And then when the vaccines rolled out, quickly segueing into that. But as a smaller family-owned company, in what ways did becoming an Emerge OTA grad help you understand what being a leader in the trucking industry is about in as we move through and beyond the COVID-19 era?
You guys had one speaker, I think his name was Kevin Birch. I think he's the guy who walks around wearing that I Love Trucks pin. And he was just a real breath of fresh air, because he's very passionate about this industry. And a lot of folks end up in trucking either by accident or because you're family related and you kind of got drafted. This isn't one of those industries that a whole lot of young people are signing up to be in. And so one of the things that being a leader in this industry and listening to some of the other speakers throughout our times, resilience is one of the key components to being in this industry, because there are days that can just chew you up and spit you out. And it's some days nothing but sheer will of managing the chaos and the dominoes falling and how many it's affecting. So it was kind of refreshing, especially as a young person, to see some of the speakers who have walked through the trenches and made it out to the other side and are, you know, choosing to share some of their wisdom with us. Watching them gave me just small glimpses of leadership and character traits, if that isn't tacky or if that makes some sense. So just resilience is the only thing that just keeps coming to my mind for that, for a leadership standpoint, especially through the COVID, because I think you take certain things for granted until you absolutely need them. And trucking, unfortunately, falls into one of those categories. You know, they're the trucks that just take up the road until everything shuts down, and they're the only things getting food and supplies to where they need to be. So.
Yeah, you're right. And, you know, we are very fortunate here in Ohio that we have so many leaders in the industry based here who have gone through that gauntlet of understanding the industry, not being overwhelmed by it, you know, embracing its incredible idiosyncrasies and variations and fluctuations, and have provided and are so willing to give back to that next generation. Kevin is certainly one of those. Yes, and spoiler alert, he will be part of next year's program as well.
Good to hear.
Along with someone I because she's right there in Fielding, but Sherry Garner Brumbaugh, who is our current ATA board chairman, has, she's just wonderful and again, much like you, she grew up in the industry.
Yeah.
She had that instant family connection and embraced it and moved through. And they provide such points of leadership contact, and they're so willing to dispense with their advice, and we're certainly grateful for that. For those of us, I've been in the industry 31 years, but I came into it sort of sideways, like so many people do when a certain career path may not work the way you were intending it to, and you say, well, this could work in the meantime, and you think of it as a filler or a stopgap measure, and suddenly
Right.
you're drawn into it, and you suddenly realize, oh, I've been in the industry for 31 years, and I have an executive position with an association. That's how I look at it. It's just you allow this industry to sort of get inside you and understand how vitally important it is, and it just becomes easy to embrace it and support it. So we're very fortunate for that, and we want to obviously keep that program moving for that. So with that in mind, Deidre, what do you think are the biggest benefits for anyone that's considering getting into the Emerge OTA program now or in the near future?
Probably the top is just one, opening your eyes up to certain issues that our industry is facing that may directly or indirectly affect my business based off of what our model is. So that was one of them. Another one of them would be, oh shoot. Can you repeat the question? I know that's really terrible.
that's okay. Hey, you went that far without.
I had like a whole bunch of them popping off at the same time, and I got one off, and I'm like,
it happens to the best of us. So we're talking about the biggest benefits for the people, just from a recommendation standpoint. Obviously, you say, yeah, I highly recommend Emerge OTA, but what benefits, do you feel that anyone getting into it now would enjoy, either with the program now as we go through the upcoming year, or in the future, even beyond that?
Thank you. The other portion of that, my number two, would have been the contacts that I now have available and or the resources. Because I hadn't worked a whole lot, like I said earlier, with the OTA, but I think I had emailed you a couple weeks ago. We're wanting some of our technicians to get their CDLs, and I tried Googling when the classes go into effect that they're now mandated to take in order to obtain a CDL, and Google is not always the easiest to find that information on. And so I sent you an email, and I don't know, within like a half hour, you had replied, and I had the answer that I needed. So the biggest takeaway for me was the resources that I now have at my disposal that I did not have, especially with the partners that OTA has, because you guys partner with a lot of other companies that are designed to help trucking companies specifically. I think you probably have some that are more just general, but you have ones that are geared towards helping trucking industry specific, recruiting, HR, litigation, some of those that we had talked about earlier. So for me, especially as a young person, not knowing a whole lot of people who are active in this industry, that's been one of the key takeaways for me. If I don't know something, now I have resources and multiple based off of the speakers who the majority of them gave us their contact information, as well as what the OTA is able to kind of help me with for whatever problem I may find myself. That was my largest takeaway.
That's great. And, and it's one of the things we are most proud of doing well, I guess, would be, we like acting as a sort of conduit between our members and the people that can answer the questions for them. If we can't, I always tell people, you send me a question. If I don't know the answer right off the top of my head, I'm going to find the person that knows the answer, and I'll have a response back. I mean, that's just, it's what we're here for. We will, and the folks that will give the right answer are people that want to make sure you know the right answer. And they're usually the people in the government positions, the enforcement and administrative bureaus, who, when they go out and do their audits, they're going to say, yeah, this carrier's got it figured out because they asked the right question ahead of time. And, part of Emerge, I feel part of the Emerge program is that for the future leaders to understand how that process works, how to foster those relationships so that you can get those questions answered quickly, and you're not relying on Google or other searching means because you can find the answer, but it may take you a long time, and you may have to
Hmm.
work through a whole bunch of wrong answers first. And we
Right.
all know in this day and age, you don't have that kind of time. You need the answer, and you need it as soon as you can get it. So yeah, we look at that as a benefit as well. So thank you for that. Uh,
Yeah.
do you feel, I guess you would say that, as we kind of come around the bend here, do you feel better equipped to advocate now on behalf? Because that's one of the things where we talk about our specialty areas to help carriers, especially smaller carriers. Do you feel better equipped to advocate on behalf of your company, in the industry as a whole, as a result of being an Emerge graduate?
Yeah, I would say so. And again, it kind of stems back, especially I was the youngest one in the class, and I was one of two ladies. So I'm a little bit of an outlier in some of this stuff. So for me, I was able to learn more. Again, I don't want to hit too hard on the resources part, but I was able to better engage with tools and areas that can get me the information that I need to better advocate for my company and or the industry as a whole. Because I think that there's a lot that happens in our industry that you just kind of look at it and you just go, that's just not right. And if I can have those resources backing me, I'll go to bat. But if I have those behind me that can help get me that information, I'll be 10 times more confident and willing to stand up for whatever it may need to be, knowing that if I'm short, that there's support there to help fill in those gaps.
That's great. And the other piece of the advocacy puzzle is when we look at we sort of look at the legislative aspect of it, and we realize that the problem that we're facing may not just be our own. I'm talking about a company like yours. Say, hey, wow, when you realize that other carriers, both large and small, may be facing the same sort of problem you have over a regulation that seems unfair or has outlived its usefulness, and it should be adjusted, updated, replaced, maybe sent away. And knowing the procedure now for getting your voice heard in front of those legislators, both at the state and also at the national level, to help further that discussion and to make them understand why it's so important that we need help from a legislative level. I would say, do you feel better equipped to handle that as well as a result of your discussions with Emerge?
Sure. Me personally, like those things are probably still a little bit above my head. But I take a little bit of peace in knowing that the OTA is out there trying to do some of that on our behalf. Like I remember Tom Blazer came in and was sharing with us that the OTA was pushing during COVID to keep trucks on the road and not, segregate by what type of commodity that you're hauling, because that was kind of going on in the background of, who is allowed to work and who isn't allowed to work. So for me, that stuff's probably a little still over my head yet, but the OTA has kind of stepped up in some of those shoes.
You feel better, and I was involved in some of those brief
Yeah.
discussions and having to type up a couple of the white paper summaries and remember them saying, you're going to separate this carrier from that carrier and say they can run and this one
Right.
can run. I mean, it was just some of the early options were just nightmare scenarios.
Yep.
How on earth are you going to enforce this? And the simple solution was, all trucking is essential and must remain so. And you're right, we were able to get everybody out, get in front of the right people and say, look, this is not, you want to debate it, fine, debate it after you make that announcement. But this initial debate is not, there's no resistance to this. If you want those shelves restocked, you leave them all out there. So that was, that was some interesting couple of weeks there when this first went down. So to wrap up a little bit, Deidre, just, we talk about the importance of the advocacy component, the leadership training component of Emerge OTA, so that you're better equipped to to both to advocate and to lead your company at some point. Now I realize, again, you mentioned that your situation is a little bit different, being in the family, but for other carriers, we don't want to dissuade them from saying that the benefits here certainly will still help, even if your situation for promotion or advancement are different than maybe a larger corporate entity. one of the things we look at from our standpoint is we are looking for people that are going to be in a position to serve on OTA's boards and committees, because we have a bunch of them, and we keep seeming, it appears like we're always creating more because of the interest and the growth in certain areas of the business and the industry, that we need people, again, whose voices haven't been heard specifically, sort of niche and specialty voices that need representation, and we're proud to offer that. So do you feel, and age aside, having gone through this from an experience standpoint, do you feel that you would be eligible to serve on a board now or a committee in the next year or two, if asked, or if you came forward and said, hey, I'd like to serve on one of these boards or committees?
For me personally, would want to have just a little bit more experience underneath of my belt, because I would want to bring that additional value to the board that I would be serving under. So if there was an option between me or somebody who had 5 or 10 years more experience than I would, I feel like the individual with the 5 or 10 year experience level beyond what I have would be a better candidate, because they've just walked through more than what I have at this point. I've been raised in this industry since I was a kid, but there's just some things that you're only going to learn by scraping your knees. And I've been very blessed and fortunate that I've not had to scrape my knees too hard, because my dad took all of those first. So he did all of those. So I get to walk and just stumble over rocks versus crawling all the time. So in a little while, once I get maybe some more experience underneath of my belt, I would feel comfortable, and that I had more value to bring to a table or a council of any sort that was looking for support.
And that's perfectly understandable. And I will assure you, Deidre, it will not take long for you to suddenly realize that you have that 5 to 10 years under your belt or more. And because I felt that way too for a long time. I was just looking up to all the people and trying to learn from them. And then it's all of a sudden, instantly, one day, it's like you're walking around to one of the trade shows or everything, and all of a sudden everybody's coming up to you and saying, hey, it's good to see, and yeah, it's amazing how fast that pendulum swings. So be ready for that when it happens, because it's pretty sudden. Deidre Ewing, thank you so much for being with us today. We really appreciate you taking the time out to talk to us about the Emerge OTA program. For those of you out there that are interested in more information on Emerge OTA, please go to our website, ohiotrucking.org. There's a whole segment on that. You can email me directly. It's Irwin, IRWIN, at ohiotrucking.org, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you have. Applications are available now. The application date will be closing in a couple weeks on July 31st. So we want to get those applications in. We'll review them, and we will be announcing our next Emerge OTA class at the OTA annual conference coming up here in Westerville at the Renaissance Hotel on September 12th and 13th. So again, Deidre, thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you everyone for joining us for today's edition of OTA on the Air. Have a great day.